The forest watches, and the greatest danger hiding in the twilight is not the animals we expect, but the thing that watches us back with an intelligence that doesn't belong there. What you are about to hear is not fiction. These are 3 terrifying stories based on the accounts of real people who ventured onto hiking trails and discovered that true horror doesn't need darkness to hunt. They went in seeking nature and found a nightmare lying in wait. These are their stories. I once took a trek on the Keystone Mountain Trail in the Alleghenies, which is one of the most extensive footpath-only trails on the continent. I went at it alone. I went deep into autumn though, so it was chilly and there weren't many other people hiking. In fact, I think I only crossed paths with maybe 2 other souls going the opposite way. The part of the trail I was on was in dense woods, and it was definitely a scenic walk. The trail ran alongside a small creek, and nothing could be heard but the murmur of the flowing water and the early morning birds chirping. It was time for me to sit down, so I found a large boulder sitting beside the creek and sat down on it. I took a sip of my energy drink, and then I could swear I was hearing an infant's cries coming from the distance. It was coming from further down the trail. Of course, I had to get up and follow the sound of it because of that off chance that a baby was stranded in the woods alone. As I walked further down the trail though, it seemed like the baby's cries stayed the same distance away. This went on for like half a minute of walking fast before I gave up and assumed it was somebody with a baby walking down the trail. I sat down on another rock I found on the side of the trail by the water. Eventually, the crying seemed to just stop. It didn't fade away really, it just stopped abruptly. I sat on that rock for 5 minutes, just taking in the nature and taking a few videos on my phone. That's when I heard footsteps approaching nearby. Expecting to see another hiker walking the trail, I saw some distressed-looking woman hurrying over to me. She came so fast that it actually startled me. She stopped uncomfortably close to my face and started screaming at me. "Have you seen my baby?" I calmly told her I heard a baby crying not too long ago and told her to follow me. We walked quickly down the trail in the direction I was chasing the sounds of the baby earlier. I looked back every few seconds to make sure she was keeping up with me. Eventually, I summoned up the nerve to ask her how on earth she lost her baby. But she didn't answer. So I turned around again and stopped when I saw she was gone. And the weird thing, she was right on my tail just 10 seconds ago. I screamed out for her a few times, but the only sounds around me were the sounds of the birds chirping and the river. I figured even if she trailed off away from me, I would at least still be able to see her in the distance. I stood there for a long time, deciding what to do next. Just move on with my life and continue the trail, or walk back and try to find this woman. I did one more quick 180-degree scan of the area we just came from, and what I saw next may not sound very disturbing, but it was disturbing to me in that very spot. I saw the woman standing across the river, arms hanging lifelessly at her sides, and she was looking at me, not saying anything, not moving a muscle, blank expression, just standing like a statue, watching me. I had made up my decision right there, and that was to move the hell on with my life right there. I walked as fast as I could away from there until my calves hurt from walking so fast for so long. Eventually, I made it back to my car after looping around another trail. I cut the hike short after what happened. I was truly unsettled by it, and even started to question my sanity. Like, did that actually even happen? It seemed so unreal, and yet, at the same time, it felt real in the sense that I lived it. I just want to know if anyone else who hiked that trail has had any kind of freakish experiences like this. Story 2. I have a nature reserve near my home since we live in a densely populated suburb and there isn't much green. It's a huge preserve with countless miles of paths for biking and hiking. So long story short, one night in 2016, at like 11 at night, I decided to go for a jog. I'm weird in the sense that I like to avoid people when I go for runs. That's just how I am. I held my phone with a tight grip with the flashlight on and started my run at the edge of the preserve onto the unpaved hiking path. I felt I had more energy running at night too. It was weird. I don't know how to describe it. There were no lights at all. It was all just nature. There was also a dead body that came up in the previous week in the preserve, but I didn't really let that concern me too much since I live in one of the safest neighborhoods in the state. It was also a weeknight, so there was literally no one else in this preserve but me. Well, that's at least what I thought. I got tired after about 10 minutes of running. Yeah, I used to be out of shape. I had to catch my breath, so the first bench I found, I sat down on. I have to admit it was creepy as hell being in a pitch black preserve like that all alone. It feels the same as being alone in the middle of a forest. There were weird sounds coming from all around, and to be quite honest with you, it was scaring me. Of course, most of them were animals, so when I heard leaves and sticks crunching nearby, I assumed it was a raccoon or a fox or something. But anyone's worst nightmare came true when I noticed something tall hiding behind one of the trees. I couldn't quite tell what it was because a phone's flashlight is only so bright. I stood up and walked a little closer, and I was kind of doing a crouch walk because for some reason, I thought that would make me more low-key. I got close enough to where I saw a hand wrapped around one of the trees. The hand was in a white glove though. I felt like my heart sank, like I was suddenly in a life or death situation, before I could even see who was behind that tree. Then, they finally decided to reveal themselves. Someone dressed as a clown stepped into the range of my flashlight. I wanted to wait until now to mention this was back during the clown craze in 2016. From what I could see in the little light I had, this person went all out with his clown costume, from the makeup right down to the clown shoes. The most disturbing part was the baseball bat with a long metal spike wedged through it that he was holding. His head was angled down to give a more menacing, terrifying look, and he walked very slowly towards me. I had only one option, and that was to run as fast as I could, even though I was already so tired. I didn't run on the trail. Instead, I ran into the woods until I felt like I was going to puke. Then I shut off the flashlight and crouched down behind a tree. I heard running zoom past me maybe 10 feet away. When the footsteps faded away into the distance, I ran back to the trail and ran all the way back the way I came. And I actually puked by the time I made it to the street, just from running so much. I didn't mention it before, but everyone figured that the dead body found the week before was linked to the clown epidemic. It should go without saying I stayed away from the preserve for a while, and I definitely never went in there past dark ever again. Story 3. I went on a solo camping excursion in the woods not far from my town. After setting up camp and eating, I took a half-hour nap in my tent and went for a hike. It was a normal hike in a rather quiet forest, until I thought I could hear footfalls close by. I could have just chalked them up to being the footsteps of an animal, but they kind of sounded human-like, if that makes sense. Considering how deep into the woods I was, and how far from any real urbanization I was, it would definitely be odd to cross paths with another person there. I didn't go looking around for anyone though. I just continued with my hike. When I got back to my tent, the first thing that I noticed was that the tent's zipper had been pulled down and the door flap was open. Right away, my heart was racing at the thought of someone having been in my tent. I checked to make sure that nobody was still in there first, and then went inside to see that my pack had been rummaged through. Surprisingly, nothing was taken though. I contemplated packing up and moving spots, but I figured it was pointless. Whoever came had already scoped out the place and left. Therefore, they wouldn't have a reason to come back. Fast forward to that night when I finally got in my tent to go to sleep. A few minutes after getting in my sleeping bag, I heard a noise. The first time I heard it, I had no idea what it could be. But the second time I heard it, it sounded like a raspy, static-filled breathing noise. I sat up and looked around my tent, and at that point, it went silent. So after sitting up with my heart racing for a decent while, I laid back down and tried to move past it. But after not even having my eyes closed for 10 seconds, I heard it again. Some kind of grainy, staticky breathing noise. I started digging through my bag, and I found something I knew for certain I didn't bring with me. I pulled out a huge, old-fashioned two-way radio type thing, and the static was emanating from that. I instantly associated it with the footsteps and whoever searched my tent. But all I was thinking was, why would they put that there? Just then, the static stopped, and there was a breathing sound once more coming from the big walkie-talkie type thing. And then, in a deep, almost unintelligible whisper, I heard the words, "I'm outside your tent." It's crazy how in just a couple of seconds your whole world can change, and how your whole body can become overcome with fear. I frantically pressed buttons on the oversized walkie-talkie until it finally seemed to turn off. Then I heard something hit the ground outside, something heavy. I had a choice. Do I stand ground and protect my belongings and myself? Or do I make a straight dash for the pickup truck? When I heard something else hit the ground right outside the tent, I chose the latter and made a run for my pickup. I left behind my tent, my sleeping bag, and other equipment, but in reality, none of that stuff really mattered when my life was potentially on the line. For all I know, it was some kind of trap to just get me to leave all my stuff behind for them to take. Or it could have genuinely been someone who intended on harming me.